People like to see what was in the past. We built our own ships, we built our own railway trains, we made our own explosives. When Australians went to war, they carried Australian gear, and so making our own explosives and gunpowder were very important.
This is part of our heritage, and the industrial heritage is very much part of Australia's story. And until you tell that story, there's a big gap.
It encapsulates the whole of that great period of time as a living, working community. It's one little remnant that just reminds you of these factories.
The Black Powder Mill is a very small building, built in 1942, very close to the banks of Cororoit Creek during the Second World War, and it was part of a very large explosives factory, which was called the Albion Explosives Factory, which covered most of the area which is now the suburb of Kenley.
This became a massive industrial area. This was the key point in the manufacture of gunpowder. You could mix it all up, you could use it and store it, but somewhere along the way it had to be finally prepared and ground together, and this was the crux of all that.
There were 400 buildings in the Albion factory, over 1,200 acres, and this is the only one that's left. There are 24,000 people working in the munitions industry during the Second World War in Melbourne's west.
There was an enormous amount of employment, and in wartime, a lot of women's employment. The standard stories are that the war offered opportunities for women to join the workforce. This is the area where a lot of that happened, and many of our families worked there and our friends worked there. It made an enormous contribution to the local economy.
To those people who came to build their beautiful houses in what is now Kenley, the mill was an eyesore, and they were very keen to get rid of it.
I understood that the factory had to go, and because of the contamination it had to be cleaned up. But when I heard that they were really going to knock over the last vestige of it, I thought that was a poor decision and that they should have kept it as an example of what went on.
There are not many powder mills left in the world, and one of the things about this one is that it's still operating, the machinery still works.
Probably late 2001, I got a phone call from Albion Ford saying that the Black Powder Mill, it seemed the last building associated with the Albion Explosives Factory, well, the demolition order had actually been issued. They'd had a heritage consultant who said that it was important, but yeah, no, not that important, couldn't save it really.
Brimbank Council had a meeting and local people spoke. That included people like Claire Brennan, Jack Sheridan, the president of the Historical Society at that time, Norm Carlton, Frank Ford and myself. That was an important meeting because it made the council realise that there was a group of people keen to save the mill, and very soon afterwards Jack said, well, we better form a friends group.
And the Albion factory was really quite close to me. I started off as a cadet engineer there and I finished up as its general manager. I saw a little article in a National Trucks magazine that said they were looking to save the Black Powder Mill, and I thought, well, okay, I'll help.
In 2001, the Australian Metal Workers Union, including Bill Shorten, started talking about a green ban, which would have meant that no worker would have demolished it, as had been proposed by the council at that time.
There was quite a concerted effort and a lot of emails flying across the world between heritage experts in the UK and Australia about the importance of this little building.
In later 2001, with the assistance of Gary Vines and Professor Ian Ray, Matthew Churchward, Rowan Lamb and others, the Trust put out a classification report and actually identified the place as being of national significance, which is very rare. And we nominated it to Heritage Victoria, and a couple of years later they actually registered it, put it on the Victorian Heritage Register, which is a very high level of heritage control.
Gunpowder has been described as the one single substance that's had the greatest effect on the world. It's got a history of well over 1,000 years, formulated first by Chinese alchemists in the 9th century, and they were looking for an elixir of life, and they found gunpowder by mixing potassium nitrate, sulphur and charcoal.
I guess the job of Friends of the Black Powder Mill was to save the mill from demolition, but that was not our main object. Our main object was to interpret and promote it, do all sorts of things such as tours and talks and help people understand what it was about.
I mean, that's a 2,000-year-old technology. That design was used by the Romans for crushing for olive oil, and by the apple farmers in Somerset to make cider.
The wheel rolls over the top of this mixture, grinding it up, and the moisture helps to keep it together, keep it safe. And when it's all mixed up, they have to take it off and dry it out, and then it gets dangerous.
They had to have very strict guidelines, and the tools were of wood, and the construction of the building was all geared to safety principles, and the lightweight walls are near the creek, so if there was an explosion, the lightweight part would blow out towards the creek.
Heritage is a wonderful opportunity to reflect about what's valuable in life. It's history in places. It tells you more than you can find in reading a book. It's got a visceral component. We can't save everything, it's not going to last forever. But it's an opportunity just for us while we go about our daily lives to reflect on what's important.
We're trying to put a mark down here of something that was once terribly important. Keeping some physical piece of a building like that is an important historical thing.
If a few people get together and resist the bureaucratic decisions, it can make an impact. You can preserve something of the past for the future.
The credit for that goes to individuals at the Trust, volunteers, but also particularly the local community and the Friends of the Black Powder Mill. Well done.
Of all the people who worked in the explosives factories and the munitions factories during the war, there were 25,000 of them in the western suburb of Melbourne. They don't get much recognition. But this mill is a reminder of those people who worked there, and the heritage value of that is why we have tried to save the mill and tried to tell you why it's here and what it's about. So, thank you.